A pretty busy morning at the White House today as President Trump made a series of announcements of accomplishments from the last 48 to 72 hours. It's so much. I mean, he did more this last weekend than Joe Biden did pretty much in his entire career, let alone his 4 years as president. It's so much to cover that I can't do it alone. I'm calling in reinforcement. I need some help. I got Joe Pags. The legendary Joe Pags. The word legend is thrown around a little bit too much in this business, but this man is a legend, and he's now bringing his show to the Salem Podcast Network, our partners, our friends. Joe, welcome to the family, and it's good to see you.
Larry, so glad to be in the family, and thanks for having me on today, man. It's a real privilege. Thank you.
Well, hey, before we even get into the details, I mean, seriously, we got a China trade deal that they said would never happen. You know, he ruined the economy, and now look at the Dow. You got the pharmaceutical announcement. What I really want your opinion on that. We're going to place some remarks from the president on that. You got a ceasefire with the Houthis. You got a ceasefire with India and Pakistan, and then you've got the freed American hostage, the last one that the Hamas was holding. That's a remarkable weekend for the president.
Yeah, it's an immense weekend, and the guy just keeps on getting the job done. And if you look at the legacy media, they're still trying to find out, how can we complain about lower pharmaceutical prices? How can we complain about stopping the war between India and Pakistan that's been going on forever? How can we complain about the China deal? And they'll find ways to, but it just is going to lower their approval rating even more. What are they, 20% now, if that? So I love watching him work. I love seeing that he just doesn't care. He's handling the media differently than he did the first time around. I still think he gives them too much access, but he's handling them better in that when the questions come in, he has no problem looking right at them. You won't talk about this. You won't report on this. That's a stupid question. I like when he does that, because these people, I think the first time around, he tried to get along with them. Now he knows, I'm just going to get the job done. And if you don't like it, don't worry. The American people will like it.
Yeah, and politically, the media and the Democrats are always aligned, of course, but the only thing they've got going for them now is to literally root against all of these things. Yes. Root against Trump's success, which of course means rooting against America's success.
It's just so dumb. Who's going to complain about lower prescription prices? Oh, the poor pharmaceutical companies, they're going to be in the poorhouse. I'm not sure I understand how you go against any of this stuff, but of course all weekend they talked about some dumb plane or something from Qatar. Right. So right. you know what I mean? That's the only thing that happened this weekend, that we might have a plane temporarily while Boeing finishes the job on Air Force One. It's silly, but it gives us stuff to talk about.
Yeah, Trump should have said that Don Lemon took the plane and lost it in a black hole somewhere. But let's get to the president's remarks. The biggest headline really coming out of this weekend. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent sat down with his counterparts from Beijing in Geneva. Little did we know that the fruits of those conversations, we thought were the preliminary discussions, actually resulted in a 90-day rollback on these tariffs, assuming that they're going to get a final deal. Here's the president announcing it just moments ago.
And they've agreed to open China, fully open China. And I think it's going to be fantastic for China. I think it's going to be fantastic for us. And I think it's going to be great for unification and peace. China will also suspend and remove all of its non-monetary barriers. They've agreed to do that. Well, they're very numerous. But again, to me, the biggest thing that came out of that meeting is they've agreed. Now we have to get it papered, but they've agreed to open up China. Going to be great for everybody.
And Joe Pags, you can see the most important part of this video is that little green square in the corner, which shows the Dow at that time. This was at 10 this morning at 42,239. That puts it up higher than the dip that it had after the tariffs were announced. This really does sort of validate Trump's messaging that he's been giving us for months, which is these tariffs, there's nothing wrong with them, and they're great tools, if necessary, to fix any trade problems you've got with other countries.
I've been to China. I adopted my daughter Gia in China. There is not an American car there. You can't go and buy American goods there. Everything is either Chinese made or from the surrounding areas. Opening up China is going to be a great thing. You know, it's funny about the green thing in the corner. I don't watch the daily. I remember Obama saying, I don't watch the daily gyrations of the stock market when it was taking a dump under him. I don't really watch it either, although I do go live on TikTok almost every night. I got about 1 million followers on TikTok. And when I go live, the idiots from the left will come in and say, how's your 401k doing? Well, how's your 401k doing? Yeah, he's really ruined your. And I'm like, I'm not retired. I'm not watching the stock market every day. The stock market is not now and never has been the economy. It's an indicator. It's certainly one part of it. But you'll see, Larry, as we talked about a minute ago, the left media, the legacy media will not report on how great this is for the economy, how great your 401k looks if you watch it every day, how great the day traders should be whistling Dixie. But instead, They're going to find a negative. It's really bad for the stock market to go up like this. This is horrible. Then they'll have a bunch of experts come in and talk about how horrible it is that your 401k is worth more than it was before. It's a great indicator. That's cool. I'm more interested in the fact that we're going to open up China. I want to see what that looks like. If they really buy our goods, if manufacturing can come back to the United States and we can fairly trade now. I hope that's what this means. I think it does, but it's going to be reported. I'm a guy who's a former television news anchor. And when I did that job, I wanted to make sure that I told the truth. They don't do that anymore. It's a very different field out there now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, everybody who said, oh, how's your 401k doing? First of all, the answer is my 401k isn't doing anything until I need it when I retire.
Right.
You schmuck.
Exactly right.
So, I've got good 15, 20 years. Maybe if I can be like you, I've got 30 years, Joe. Because, you're still. But also, here's the other thing. If you were panicked about your 401k and you sold immediately, you're screwed right now. Just buy stocks that you can hold on to. And, listen, first of all, don't take advice from me. But if you just sort of trusted in the American economy and trusted with the new approach to our finances, you're better off today than you were when everybody was panicking.
It was insider trading when President Trump said buy. I've always heard buy low, sell high. I always thought that was the way to go. And you're right. I'll say it a little bit meaner than you were. You were very nice about it. If you took from your 401k when it was bottoming out because we had a new president in town who's putting new policies in place, you're a stupid person. You're just not a smart person. So if you did that, it's not his fault. It's your fault. Larry, like you, I'm not going to look at my 401k until I retire. I'm thinking in about 40 years. But at the end of the day, those who are saying, how's your 401k doing? Those who are saying, how are your investments doing? Probably don't have a 401k nor investments. They were just told some talking point from the far left. And the liberal talking point was, look how he's ruined the economy in his first 4 days in office. It's just so stupid. Now we're seeing the fruits of his labor, the fruits of what he said he would do. And thank God for us. I'm so glad he's in office.
Well, I just want to know how Nancy Pelosi's 401k did over the last 6 weeks. She knows a lot more about this. All right. So that's one deal with China, it looks like. All right. Next video. Let's see what else he announced.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases, and having these, they really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it. That I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop. And they have. And they did it for a lot of reasons, but trade is a big one. We're going to do a lot of trade with Pakistan. We're going to do a lot of trade with India. We're negotiating with India right now. We're going to be soon negotiating with Pakistan. And we stopped the nuclear conflict. I think it could have been a bad nuclear war. Millions of people could have been killed. So I'm very proud of that. I also want to thank.
Yeah, and I don't think he's overstating the case there, Joe, because we've never seen this before. During the entire Cold War, there's a reason why they called it a Cold War. Yes, we were two superpowers. We in the Soviet Union, we had a nuclear arsenal, but we never actually engaged with each other. This is the first time, I think, in the nuclear age where you had two countries, both with nuclear weapons, who started a hot war with each other, where actual engagement, that can escalate quickly, especially with the type of dislike that these two countries have that are rooted in cultural and religious issues.
And what did the left say again? Oh, no wars under Trump. Look, he started a new war between India and Pakistan. That's been going on forever. They've been arguing about this piece of land, Kashmir, forever. And the fact that he was able to go in so quickly, so fast to stop anybody from even having an inkling of a thought of using a nuke and solve this problem, again, they're going to say, yeah, but what about that plane from Qatar? So again, I'm so glad that you're reporting this exactly as you are. I'm going to try my best to do something like this as well. Not as good as you, but at the end of the day, you've got two factions that hate each other over a piece of land nobody in this country, well, most of us can't find on a map, where President Trump said, this could spill over. This could be millions of deaths. Let's do something about it. And he did.
So let me ask you something, because, you know, listen, neither of us are cheerleaders for this president, but we certainly, I mean, sometimes we are, but it's not like he can do no wrong and he's perfect. Right. And sometimes some of the things that happen from this White House or the prior White House, it deserves some scrutiny. It deserves some challenges. Yeah. I'll throw this out there and maybe you can talk me off the ledge. I do get worried with Trump's worldview sometimes, where he said, you just heard him, he said, listen, I talked to them, I said, we got a lot of trade to do, we got a lot of business to do, let's stop this so we can get the trade going. And from his point of view and from his perspective, that makes logical sense. But there are enemies out there. There are very real enemies out there, like Iran. They don't care about the economy. They don't care about trade. They don't care about commerce. They want to murder us. And I wonder sometimes if Trump gets that all the time.
Well, I think he does. I know that he's this guy, and I think you know this as well. We both interviewed him face-to-face. We've interviewed him a lot of times. He's a guy that just wants to win at the end of the day. Is it a win to have some sort of a calming, state, at least in his mind, with Iran? Maybe a little bit, but I think more so, he starved them. He made them broke. He didn't give them the unfrozen money that Biden did. He didn't allow them to sell their own oil to make money for themselves. He didn't allow them to use money as fungible, where they can use it anywhere they wanted, including supporting the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas. I think that it's a win for him if he has something that says, look, I got some sort of a deal. But at the same time, the first time around, which could have been more successful had the media been on his side, had he not had leakers in the White House, the first time he did shut off the money. Iran couldn't do anything. They could saber rattle all day, death to America all day in Parliament, but they couldn't do what they ended up doing for 4 years under Biden. I think that any sort of a deal with our enemies, and they're real enemies, and I think he knows that they're real enemies, any deal with those enemies will be to shut off the pipeline of money that goes in to help support killing Americans and other good people around the world. The one thing that I would complain about in the first 100 days, not that you asked, but I'm not a cheerleader in that everything he does is great. I like a lot of what he does. The way they rolled out the tariffs, Larry, was clunky. It was bad. It didn't make any sense. They fixed that on April 2nd. When he walks out and has a chart and says, these are the tariffs they're charging us, this is why we have to do reciprocal, then I think Americans went, oh, I get it now, because the left media spin was Iran has the right to sell its oil because the people need food there. That's not why they're selling the oil. Or tariffs are bad. Look, Trump's ruining the economy. Look at your 401k. When they roll something out that's massive, that makes a big difference either here in America or globally, they've got to be very, very careful to explain it to a T. Otherwise, it's going to be spun the wrong way.
Well, that brings us to another major announcement today, which none of us saw coming. He teased it last night. This has to do with an executive order having to do with the cost of pharmaceuticals here in America. And this addresses one of the things that has frustrated and angered and even outraged many Americans for decades, that you go to get a drug at your drugstore here or something that's been prescribed from a doctor, and it's going to cost you like astronomical amounts through the roof. You go to a foreign country and you can get it for dirt cheap because they have socialized medicine or they have price controls. Well, the president made an announcement today, and I think you're right. Everybody wants lower, cheaper drug prices, but how do you get there? Are you violating conservative principles and free market principles by putting price controls on the pharmaceutical industry? Let's see what the president said.
But starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care, countries where they paid a small fraction of what for the same drug that what we pay many, many times more for. And we'll no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly, I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing. But they've gotten away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal. And the drug companies actually told me stories. It was just brutal how they forced them. And European Union suing all our companies, Apple, Google, Meta, they're suing all of our companies. They end up, they have judges that are European Union centric, and they get rewarded 15 billion, 17 billion, 20 billion, and they use that to run their operation.
So Joe Pags, listen, again, nobody wants to pay as much for drugs, and something should be done about it. But your pals at American Enterprise Institute and Competitive Enterprise Institute and all those other conservative think tanks who often don't get anything real done, they're going to say, whoa, 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 this is price controls. Conservatives aren't supposed to be in favor of price controls. How do we answer that?
Well, I get that. You know, after the hurricane comes through and you want to go buy a generator, the generators suddenly cost 5, 10, 15 times more than they did before the hurricane came in. So we've got something that some laws and some local regulations, statewide, countywide, maybe throughout the United States, probably not that many that are federal, but that say you can't price gouge. In fact, that's against the law. I just think that we're used to decades and decades and decades of people price gouging us because they have this understanding that we've got more money, we have more ability. No, right, yeah. They could, exactly right. Again, Trump's mentality is, and I think you know this as well as I do, his mentality is stop treating us unfairly. Stop having us play the baseball game and you get 5 runs before we start. Stop,
because we look like the soccer. We look like the patsy. He's right back there in Queens again. Yeah.
And nobody ever pushed back. That's the problem. And he's a guy from Jamaica, Queens, like my mother's from Jamaica, Queens, and he's going to fight you if you're being unfair. I think he just wants something fair. Does a so-called price control, does that come off as fair? Is that a conservative value? It's not a conservative value necessarily unless we can prove that they've been gouging us for no reason. So if you can go to Mexico and get it for $15, but it costs you and me $1,500, I don't think wouldn't even call it a price control. I would say we want fairness in the ability to get prescription drugs. I'll never forget Debbie Stabenow, when I was a news anchor in Michigan. She was a senator from Michigan. She would take people by the busload, and I didn't agree with a lot of what she did, to Canada, across the border into Canada from Michigan, buy a bunch of pharmaceutical products that the elderly, especially who are on price controls as far as their income, would go and get at a much cheaper price. They could live a better life. Why should we have to go into Canada and get a cheaper prescription drug when it's the exact same pharmaceutical from the exact same place, just maybe with a different label where it said A on the end of the label or something because it's in Canada? I hate calling it price controls. I guess in essence it is, but we should do something that'll force them to be fairer. Is there a better way to do it than to just say across the board 30 to 80% cheaper for prescriptions because I said so? Is there a better way to do that? Probably. You could probably package it in a different way where it doesn't look like a price control. What leverage do we have against the pharmaceutical companies to stop doing it? Let's maybe use that leverage. But I hear you. I am a conservative through and through, but I don't want to be screwed because I'm in America. I just don't want to.
Right. And being conservative isn't, a suicide pact. It's like if your principles and your ideas have actually made things worse, then you should re-examine those principles and try to modify for the world we're living in. I'm with you. And maybe this is like tariffs, where this executive order is a tool, a weapon, a threat against the pharmaceuticals for them to clean up their act. And let's face it, the way they behaved themselves during the pandemic and the lockdown and with the shots, and that they have not earned anybody's good favor, this industry, over the decades. So who's going to go to bat for them? Quickly, though, did you just break an investigative story that Senator Debbie Stabenow is guilty of drug trafficking across international lines?
I think they actually called it something, and she got the approval before she did it. I don't think I was letting any secrets out, although not a fan of Stabenow. If I got her in trouble, I'd be okay with that, to be honest.
All right, let's turn to another agreement. This one was forged on, I believe, late Thursday or Friday, but the announcement officially today. The Houthis, this terrorist group that's funded by Iran, thank you, Joe Biden, for bankrolling them, has been firing on American vessels and blockading naval passages and shipping routes in the Middle East for over a year now. Biden literally did nothing about it. Trump, he did something about it.
We also, as you know, created a situation where the Houthis, for the first time ever, have ceased firing, and they've let it be known that they're not going to be firing at American ships anymore, not going to be firing at Americans anymore. This was a heavy barrage that lasted for approximately 50 days. And as you know, they've been in war essentially for forever. But over the last 10 years, they've been very difficult for other countries. Nobody was able to do what we did. But they stopped, and we take their word for it. Their surrogates and them directly said, we don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if you should necessarily take their word for it. I'm guessing they're taking the word of Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, the nations that the president will be visiting this week as he's about to board Air Force One about an hour from now, Joe. And I got to guess that the president's men, the Secretary of State, they said, we are not leaving for this trip unless you call off the Houthis. And that's what happened here.
Well, I agree with you. I want to bring up something that happened last week. And again, as a former journalist, I'm a reformed journalist. When I saw somebody ask him a question about the Houthis, they're going to stop bombing our stuff, and we're going to stop bombing them. We're going to have a ceasefire. It's going to stop because the Houthis are being destroyed, decimated. Please stop, please. This is what Trump said. A reporter that was in the Oval Office, Larry, I'm sure you heard this, says, well, how do you know that? You're talking to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the United States, who only makes actions as the commander-in-chief if he needs to. We need to take out the Houthis because they're bombing us. The Houthis want to stop. Okay, we're going to stop. The reporter literally wanted Trump to say what, like the New York Times told him. I'm not really sure what they were looking for. This is so poorly reported. What you just did was just give the information to your audience, and I get to talk about it as well, that the Houthis are being decimated. And also, and I think you're right about this angle, I'm not going to the Middle East until they stop it. Yeah. And they stopped it. Now, you've got it from the source. It's almost like journalism is so far gone. They don't realize that the president of the United States is the source on military issues for the United States. And the vice president was there, and the secretary of state was there. They were all there. But that's where it was. How do you know they're going to stop? Because I'm the freaking president. What's the matter with you?
Joe, they're coming off 4 years of Joe Biden, and I don't think what you just said about the president being the commander-in-chief is necessarily true when he was in that desk.
Point well taken. No, I think you're right about that. We still don't. I guess Jill Biden was running it, right? We just saw that in The View the other day. Who else could it? It was not Joe making the decisions. Good point, Larry. I stand corrected.
Maybe Hunter. Maybe Susan, right? Maybe. All right. And speaking of that, I think one other loose end, if I can use such a flippant term when it comes to a human life, was also tied up prior to the president's lifting off from Andrews. And that was finally the release of the last remaining American citizen hostage held by Hamas after the October 7th attacks. Again, you barely heard Joe Biden say anything about this, or Antony Blinken, or Jake Sullivan. But this has been something that the president has been hammering almost every day, and he made the joyful announcement today.
And third, I'm very happy to announce that Idan Alexander, an American citizen who until recently most thought was no longer living, thought was dead, is going to be released in about 2 hours, actually. And he's going to be released before the eyes of Steve Witkoff, who has done a fantastic job. I know a lot of people that have a lot of talent. I know Steve had a lot of talent, but I know a lot of people with a lot of talent, but there's one that I thought had a special way about him, special personality, aside from being a good deal maker, had a special way about him, and it was Steve. Knew very little about the subject matter, who does, but he learned it in about 2 hours. And he's been fantastic. So I want to just thank Steve. But they're going to be releasing Idan in about 2 hours from now, or sometime today, let's say. And again, they thought he was dead just a short while ago. His parents are so happy.
It's obviously a joyful thing and a long time in the making. I'm curious, first of all, Joe Pags, is obviously this is a wonderful thing, and we got to get all the hostages as well as the Israeli hostages too. But it's good that we got the American citizen. I hate to even ask it, but isn't it remarkable? Aren't you, even with our cynical view of the media, aren't you a little stunned that this was not a daily drumbeat of a scandal during the Biden administration, that American citizens were held hostage? Look at all these other hostages that Rick Grinnell's been able to free up from Venezuela and from other countries in Eastern Europe. And we never heard a damn thing about them. What are journalists doing in this town?
They were playing the deflection game. To keep their bona fides, they had to act as if this guy really was in charge. They had to run cover every single day. They had to make sure that they only found the so-called good things. They had to not press KJP, Karine Jean-Pierre ever in the press room. If you asked about a hostage, she would say, I would direct you to the State Department. If you asked about something that happened with the Secret Service, I would direct you to the Secret Service. If you asked about the president when he's on vacation, I would direct you to his wife. So you never got any answers. They ran interference on purpose. Now suddenly, Larry, they're trying to make up for it by, at the stupid correspondence dinner the other day, the guy from Axios says, we probably should have done a better job covering how far gone he was in his last year. And literally a half an hour later, they handed the guy an award for excellence in journalism. So journalists in this country, they'll say if this guy wasn't released within 2 hours of Trump making the announcement, see, it was 2 hours and 4 minutes, he's a liar. And at the end of the day,
right.
you know good from bad, you know good from evil. So does everybody watching, listening to your great show. They didn't buy that BS for 4 years, and now finally we're getting some truth. And we're not getting it from the journalists. Again, he's given access to us like we've never seen before. We're getting it from him. And thank God we are. But you're right. You have American citizens that were behind. The reason why Biden's administration didn't do anything is because they were trying to straddle the line. The Palestinians are good and the Israelis are good. You can't do that. Trump came in and said, we're gonna make it Trump-a-lago over on Gaza, and we're gonna make sure that everybody's released who is still alive, or else you'll all die. I mean, that's the only way to do it. He went in and he showed the strength that we inherently have.
Yeah. And listen, every time I complain about the media, which is daily on this show, I always wrap it up by saying, that said, don't ever change, because that's why our numbers are growing. It's why your show is exploding, Joe Pags, and now part of the Salem Podcast Network, because people now have alternatives. They don't have to worry about the gatekeepers. They're going to get the truth and the information delivered to them in a way that makes sense to them. And as long as the media continues to bear their head in the sand and act like propagandists, that just helps us.
Larry, it's why he won election. It's why he won the office back, because he won on shows like yours and mine and Rogan and Bongino and fill in the blank, all the podcasts, all the radio shows, all the so-called new or alternative media. That got it done. And Kamala Harris was afraid to go on shows like that, except for Call Me Daddy, Call Her Daddy, something like that, where they made up a fake set for a couple $100,000. The people who listen to you and watch you, I'm sure, tell you like they tell me. Thank you. You're telling the truth. Thank you. My grandfather, thinks that it's something else. Thank you. My coworkers are lighting me up about this thing because they only watch CNN. You have to have a balance. And I think we've got a better balance now than we've had in probably 50 to 80 years.
I just want you to know, Joe Pags, that we're going to isolate the audio of you saying, call me daddy. It's going to become my ringtone when you call me. And you say, oh, Pags is calling. Call me daddy. Call me daddy. We're going to use it as a drop on the show. You gave us gold just now, Joe Pags, and that's why you are. Good, brother.
Hey, listen, thanks for having me on the program. Thank you so much.
You bet. Great to see you. And again, welcome to the Salem Podcast Network. Everybody go over and subscribe now wherever you like your podcast or listen to your podcast. Add Joe Pags to your daily listening pleasure.